Hi, everyone, and welcome into Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name's Josh Albrecht, and with me, as always, is my good pal, John Taylor. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Josh. I got to be honest. I'm sad that I'm not wearing a Tarek Skubal Brewers jersey, but the
Mm,
trade deadline is here and gone. And I got to say, I'm pretty happy with the return. So, not to.
that's impressive because a lot of people were upset one way or another. A lot of angry feelings when it came to the Brewers and the trade deadline. First, you mentioned it, Skubal. Let's get the Skubal thing out of the way.
Yeah.
So, from the last time that we had the show here, we were both like, let's do it. Go get Skubal. And then, of course, reality hit, and he goes to the Dodgers because, of course. And then all the reports come out, and they say, well, any team could have done what the Dodgers did, which we know as Brewers fans is not true because the risk is so much bigger for the Brewers than it is for a team like the Dodgers because the Dodgers can just buy whoever they want if that move ended up not working out. Where, literally the prospects that they gave away, I jokingly said, they can just pay them when they become free agents in 5 years. Like they can just do that anyway. So it's just a different situation than what the Brewers would be able to do. A lot of people didn't understand that nationally. Obviously, a lot of us here locally did. Okay, so then they don't get Skubal, which sucks. But then honestly, like even hearing Skubal, I was like, good. Like he came across as just such like a jerk. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't. You wouldn't
Yeah.
have
I
finished
was,
it.
I was really surprised by that response. As time has gone away from it and we've learned more information, I'm not trying to open up old wounds for Brewers fans, but it definitely does seem like Skubal wanted to go to the Dodgers. It seemed like all but guaranteed he was going to sign that contract. So while it doesn't make sense for the Tigers to just roll over, it does sound like they wanted to send him to a place he wanted to go. And ultimately, the Detroit's brass was okay with the package and that it didn't really seem like they were interested in exploring other options. Um, I didn't love it. Any team could go out and get me. It's like, well, yeah, within reason. Like, sure, every team could trade their top 20 prospects and land you, but are you worth that? And the answer is like, yes and no. It's a 2 month rental. Like, there's so many factors at play that, yeah, I don't think Tarek really draped himself in glory with that. But like I said, the more I learned, the more I was like, oh, this is where he wanted to go. The Tigers were perfectly fine with just like taking that offer and being done with it, is the impression that I got. And that's just kind of the way it goes. I think Zaire Hope is like an interesting prospect. I think isn't like, I forget who else they got, like River Ryan, like at a pitcher. He's like going to be like a 28-year-old prospect. He's just like, it's just not a great package. I do understand why people are upset about that, but at the end of the day, like you can only offer what you can offer. And it sounds like the Brewers offered a pretty similar package to what you and I were discussing, one that I would have taken. One that apparently that was centered around Luis Pena, and also that they were willing to offer another top 100 prospect. I'm assuming like a Braylon Payne, another hitter,
Mm-hmm.
and then potentially another outfielder, maybe Lara. You know what I mean? Like there was like real conversation about. And then Matt Arnold, we're so far away, we can add even further context. He was on the broadcast on Monday saying an irresponsible offer was made to the Tigers. Like, and you heard Pat Murphy talk about it. Like they were fully expecting to act a little reckless this trade deadline and go get Skubal, and it just didn't happen. And what more are they supposed to do if they just don't want to trade with the Brewers?
Right. Well, and the big point that apparently the Tigers were making is they wanted a pitcher that was ready now, and so they wanted Logan Henderson, and he was not available. He was an untouchable, which he should have been. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is like the Brewers would have had to give up their third starter. Like, how does that make any sense? It doesn't, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. And so that was kind of the whole thing to where it was like the two sides were never even close. And it never seemed like there was even really that much room for negotiation because they were going to just send him to Detroit or to the Dodgers anyway. So be it. Now we're sitting here on this last Monday going, it's a trade deadline. Trade deadline's at 5 p.m. Central. What are we doing? Are they going to trade for anything? For the love of God, please help us.
Mm-hmm.
And we get that answer. Um, And it turns out that the trade that ends up going through was good, but also really upsetting to a lot of people. I will be honest, I was sitting here, I was not familiar as much with these prospects, but Frias and Ragsdale are apparently guys that absolutely a lot of people, especially some people at the station, were not happy with being traded for May and Romero. And I think it's kind of twofold because one, you made the trade with the Cardinals. So it's you're going in division, which is kind of a risky play.
The last time they traded with the Cardinals was 2015, and it was also the longest standing like no trade embargo in Major League Baseball to go that long without trading with a team. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
Now it's 2016 with the Cubs. Maybe this was just Brewers focus. Either way, they have not traded with the Cardinals since 2015, which is interesting to say the least.
They make the trade for these pitchers, which they did need, right?
But
desperately needed them, but they are also rentals. So not only do we talked about like how even if, hey, we might be willing to trade even a little bit more for a Mason Miller, knowing that we'd have team control, blah, blah, blah. We have no team control. I mean, technically we do, I think with May, but we'd have to pay him $25 million next year, and the Brewers are not going to do that. So essentially we have 3 rentals between Sansatella and then the 2 boys from St. Louis. Full disclosure, at the time of this taping, there is a game going on right now, the day game between the Brewers and the Pirates, and May's on the mound, so he's making his debut for the Brewers. I mean, overall, where were your feelings at on the trade?
I went into Monday knowing that we weren't going to get Skubal because that trade happened on a Saturday for some reason. 48 hours before the deadline, before anybody could offer anything else up. I went in there thinking that there was a world where they were going to get better, maybe not the best return, but they could get better at a couple different avenues with the same amount of prospects. And I think the Brewers nailed it in terms of what that is. Like, I know people were upset about losing Alexander Frias and Josiah Ragsdale. Here's what I'll tell you. Those are what people in like prospect conversations refer to as helium prospects, people who have like risen really quickly, kind of out of nowhere. And there's no reason to assume that this is going to be sustainable in any sort of meaningful way. And I hope that they go on and do well, but Ragsdale got called up to AA, and he had been bombing balls, but so have Andrew Fisher, so has Payne. I mean, like, there's been a lot of guys who've been doing that in AA, and that there's no reason to necessarily think that this is going to sustain if he gets called up to AAA or even makes the major leagues, right? So it's like, we're talking about 2 guys we're really excited about, but they're years away from being years away. Like, Frias is an 18-year-old who was doing well in low A. Like, to act like we were just going to be able to get rid of no one for a guy who the Dodgers made untouchable. Obviously, it's really unfortunate he had Tommy John twice in 21 and 23, Dustin May. But like, you look at his stuff, it is absolutely nasty. He throws 3 fastballs, his sweeper, his sinker, cutter. He's got a 6-pitch mix. Like, this is not a slouch. This is not, we were talking about this is not Frankie Montas. This is not a Jose Quintana random signing. Like, this is a guy who really easily, if somebody were to get injured, could slot into the 3rd pitcher in a 5-game series. Like, will be your 4th pitcher in every single series, and like, happily. Like, I'm so glad the Brewers still have Logan Henderson. Like, sometimes the trade is keeping the pieces. And if you're going to tell me that this trade stinks, that we got a serviceable rotation pitcher when we've been watching Brandon Sproat kind of just flop around on the mound, I think Dominic Contronio said it best on one of his post-game shows. Like, he's craning his neck to try to look at why these quality starts are quality. And it's like, I'm happy with Dustin May. I think it's a great addition. Just to talk about him a little more. Yeah, it's a $20 million mutual option next year. Do the Brewers pick that up? Probably not, seeing as 23 to Brandon Woodruff was like the largest they'd ever offered to anybody. So maybe not, but it's an all-in move to like try to go get to the playoffs. I think Jojo Ramirez as a lefty, he all of a sudden makes Grant Anderson not necessary. That's why he found his way optioned. Bryce Wilson is going to find his way optioned when he comes back down too. I mean, they technically optioned down Anderson for for Senzatella, but it's like we the two things we said we needed were a little more help on the back end of the rotation. Check. We needed another real deal lefty in the bullpen. Check twice. And the Senzatella offerings, we got rid of two guys who were never going to be Brewers. So it's like you can be upset, but to get three really important arms in two of like the three massive areas of need for the Brewers, yeah, it stinks that we lost two guys, but you got to hold on to Andrew Fisher. Jesus Mate is still a Brewer. You still have Braylon Payne. You still have a dearth of guys. Marco Dinges, speaking of like the trade we didn't even talk about, like we got Bo Naylor for Blake Perkins basically, and Craig Yoho, because we already shipped off the relief pitcher in the piece. But like
Correct.
This team is churning the roster. Matt Arnold did not sit idly by. You can say whatever you want, but if you think the Brewers didn't do anything, if you're looking at the previous deadlines, like they did a lot. They're trying. Like I truly believe for a team that is currently the best baseball team by record in the entire league, to make this many swings, I think it's meaningful. Like it doesn't feel like they didn't do anything. At the end of the day, their offense needs to produce. There was never a bat. We knew they weren't going to trade for a bat. And what needs to happen, and what's the ultimate wild card is going to be, is like, can the William Contrerases, the Garrett Mitchells, the Christian Yelich, the guys you expect to be producing for this team, will they get out of their slumps and start producing? Because if they do, then they're just as nasty as they have been. And they continue to be anyways. So
yeah, that's super well said. And the point on the pitching, if you want something, you got to trade something. Like you're not going to trade for what you want for nothing, right? Like that's not how it goes, especially if you're making a legit push. I think the one piece that some fans are looking at this from on the other side of the coin is that, is it worth it at this point? Because Skubal went to the Dodgers, I think that there were some fans that were going, this got so much more difficult. So now should we? They became more cautious of, should we go all in? But again, to your point, John, if you're going to try to go up against a behemoth like the Dodgers, doesn't it feel like a good time to do it is when you have the experience of what happened last season, while also being able to look at the fact that you have the best record in baseball? You've also put yourself in the best position. Some teams might be going, we got to get past the Dodgers, and they're not going to be anywhere close to that position. They might be fighting for a wild card spot and going, we still have to get past the Dodgers. So a lot of opportunities for the Brewers to still absolutely give themselves the best chance. And as we've seen what's happened since the trade deadline, things this last week kind of raised some eyebrows and some question marks about where things may be or end up being at the end of the season, knowing that we still have a month and a half to go in the regular season. We're going to talk about what these trades mean for the Brewers down the stretch, what we've seen. You talked about it a little bit there, John, about Christian Yelich and Contreras and the rest of these guys, what they need to do, where we can see these pieces fitting in, and kind of looking ahead to what the focus is going to be for this Milwaukee Brewers team going down the stretch. That plus much more when we come back on Don't Tell Me How to Fan, here not only on YouTube on Not Done Yet Media, but also on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Welcome back, everyone, to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Josh Albrecht, John Taylor, continuing our conversation about the Brewers. Trade deadline is passed. We now have our team. We know who we have. What can they do? We talked about the pieces that they added. Dustin May, Romero, Senzatella. We got these guys in here now, all pitching. We're not able to add a bat. But let's talk, John, about kind of how we see these pieces fitting in. Because originally my thought was they either got to go take a huge swing, get a guy like Skubal, who's then going to jump to be right below Miz in your rotation, or you got to go just get some arms that are going to end up giving your rotation guys some breaks so that they don't get fatigued. Where do you see Dustin May fitting in those two options?
I think he slots in probably closer to the first, but somewhere in the middle. I think like where he slots in is he is probably tied for the third best pitcher for the Brewers. And I know how incredible Logan Henderson's been, but there's health issues. There's a consistency there. Dustin May is like the healthiest he's ever been, right? And he's looked pretty good with the Cardinals. Like if you take out, he got pieced up, I think, for like the tune of like 13 runs in his first 2 starts, and that really like bloated his ERA. But if you want to talk about like, if we measure like FIP, right? Like stuff that hit strikeouts, walks, home runs, since May 1st, he's in like 70 innings. He ranks 8th in baseball in like FIP. And if you look at the list, like there's 3 other Brewers on there. So you're talking about a guy who comes in and slots into somebody with like a lot of control, who has a lot of really impressive pitches, and somebody who I think, like, to your second point, is going to be able to just like stabilize this rotation. Like, we are very fortunate that Kyle Harrison came back and pitched a hell of a game, 5 strong innings. They were claiming cramps, but I'm not sure that they didn't want to just get him up, and then they were going to never pitch him probably more than that, just given his rehab start with the Rattlers last Thursday. So I'm not too surprised by that. And you think like they got addition by subtraction by sending down Brandon Sprout. I by no means am saying that he is a bust. What I am saying is that his rookie campaign for the Brewers as a starter in the major leagues needed to be done, right? Like it's just, there's something going on. The game needs to simplify for him in a way that it hasn't been. And I think that unfortunately the way injuries creep up, like it's better to get him down there throwing, starting games so he can come back and probably do that again. But we can see that corresponding move. They're able to run 6 guys now where you're saying Dustin May is your 4th pitcher, and then you're running Robert Gasser and Shane Drohan as 5 and 6. Like what a strong rotation, and what a luxury it is to be able to actually run a 6-man rotation. So that way your Mizes, your Harrisons, your Hendersons, they can all get rest, So I think not only is his performance and the way he can pitch going to really be utilized by this Brewers club, like they've shown that, I think like the big thing is that he is going to allow them to most enact the vision that we discussed, which is let's start getting guys rest. Let's start finding ways to get us ready for the postseason, so we're leading with our best foot forward when the regular season's all said and done. And I think like he's an innings eater at minimum, but best case scenario, he could be just as nasty as what he projected to be earlier in his career, or in the way Brewers pitching development wants them to be nasty, which is like throwing hard fastballs, getting really nice movement on their breaking speed stuff, which he has in spades. So,
yeah, nope, agree with all that. And then when you go a step further away from that, and you just think about the prospects in general, and the idea of prospects and what they could be, and in comparison to what this team needs now, right? We always are focusing too on what the prospects could be on the pitching side, but the bats are the thing that have been the most struggling or up and down all season long. And one of those names was Christian Yelich. So not sure if you saw, John, but earlier this week, Murph came out and actually said, listen, I know fans are frustrated, but I heard boos. We can't have booze. We got to support him, but like go out there, show him some love. You remember what he's done. And I was kind of like, yeah, but Murph, we're trying to win a championship right now. Well, I happened to be at the game after that little ooh-rah-rah speech from Murph, and the fans were standing up at his first at bat and cheering him, and they were listening. And then he did strike out, but then he had that huge double, RBI double, and the place went nuts. And I think it really showed that in reality, we just need to get this, like, everyone needs to be on the same page that any frustration that we have as fans is not towards a specific player. We all want the same thing. It was the same thing with Joe Yellow. It was the same thing with Trevor McGill. Like, the fans are frustrated because they want it just as bad as the players do. We are not upset with the person. We're upset with the performance. We all want the same thing. We're going to be upset when you fail. We're going to lose our minds when you succeed. And we saw that through Christian Yelich. And now the thing really becomes, was that a flash in the pan, Or was that start of an opportunity not for Christian Yelich to be MVP Christian Yelich? That's gone. I don't think anyone is thinking that. But could we see him be serviceable to this team down the stretch?
Yeah, I think like ultimately Yelich needs to understand that like the Brewers and this organization and this fan base has a higher expectation of him, right? Like whether it's fair or not, like the Brewers need more from him and that contract. And I'm not going to rake the guy over the coals, but then some choices and changes need to be made. You know, I keep joking about like a phantom IL injury, and it's like maybe that's not the best way, but like batting him second, first, third, fourth, like in the top half of this lineup is not producing the way you want it to. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that like after Pat Murphy came out with that rah-rah speech, like they ultimately were going to move him to the seventh hole. Like he understands that he's not where he needs to be. And I think like they're all aware of it. I think part of it is like maybe fans should be booing. There is this like ho-hum complacency, really nice thing about Brewers fans where we're just so good gosh golly happy to be there. And I think if we're not going to hold them accountable in that way, then like where is the pressure coming from? You know what I mean? Like where is the pressure coming from? So they should feel external pressure. It sucks, but like, hey, that's why you get paid generational wealth to hit a baseball. Like you got to figure that out. And the same thing goes with, you know, William Contreras and Garrett Mitchell. Like these are the guys in the middle of the lineup that you're expecting to hit for power. Like we need the power, you know, we need guys getting on and actually hitting home runs for like, so every home run seems to be a solo home run nowadays, right? Because everybody is just like strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. And then Jake Bauers hits a home run in the sixth hole with nobody on. It's like, we're not doing ourselves any favors by being the small ball factory that we are. And the few guys that actually can hit for power need to do it. And so, you know, I understand that we didn't go get a bat. I do. And does this pitching staff make this offense any better? No. But it means they don't have to try to score 8 runs every game. You know, it's not like this team, they need to just score 3 runs and they'll win most of the games they play. And I still like that for them. So,
yeah, I think a few things are based on what you were saying. So first of all, in regards to Christian Yelich, so yeah, I mean, Yelly was asked about it after the game about like the fans and everything, and he said, "Yeah, I know it's been a rough couple of months, and yeah, that was cool to see." You can tell how frustrated Yelich is, right? Like that's the one thing that I won't agree with is anyone who's out there that's saying, you know, Yelich just doesn't care. He's in this for the money, blah blah blah. It's pretty evident that the guy wants to live up to the role he's been given on this team. You know, Vaughn was also asked about it, and he said, that's our guy. Like, he's the leader of the clubhouse. Like, he's there. Yelich knows that, too. And so Yelich absolutely is not just coasting by. Like, he wants to get it done. We want to get it done, right? And so I don't know what the solution is. If it's to be nicer to him and all be on his side, great, let's do it. If it's a phantom injury, if it's booing, I don't care, whatever it takes, but we need to figure something out. And the other point you made, John, that was absolutely great was that this goes so much further beyond just Christian Yelich. This is not a situation to where we have a bunch of guys hitting and Yelich is just this huge red flag in, you know, otherwise a perfect scenario. We are struggling up and down the lineup for consistency and constant hitting from 1 through 9. To your point, a lot of the games that have been won lately have been in that 7, 8, 9 way, and they've been won with a lot of, all right, I'll get walked, and then I'll steal second, and then there'll be, a grounder that'll get a guy over to third, and then a sac fly to get the guy home. And now we got 1 run, and then a strikeout, and then the game's over, and then the inning's over, right? That's how you got the 1. Manufacturing runs has to be able to happen in multiple ways. And right now, it seems like the Brewers are so set in their small ball way that it makes it predictable for the other opposing pitchers. You need to have the guys like we saw Contreras, like we've seen Churio be able to do, that are threats. The opposing pitchers have to be looking at the lineup and go, okay, I got a Joey Ortiz up or David Hamilton up. I gotta, throw some easier pitches to these guys because after them is going to be Bryce Terang or Jackson Churio or any of these guys that can take me yard. That thought has to be going through their mind. if the entire time it's, well, these pitchers can do whatever they want because these guys aren't going to hit it over the yard. If I throw a mistake and they take advantage of it, it's a single or a double. It's not a home run. I'll be able to make up for that. We can't let opposing pitchers get in that mindset, which I think is happening a little bit too much. And that's the problem. That's the problem. So if the Brewers can figure that out, and they have time to do it, that's the other thing, is that we talk about it's as much as you want to be the good team, it's the hottest team that finds a way to win the World Series, to make it all the way. You can be the best team, but if you can also be the hottest team, you're unstoppable. And so if they can be the hottest team, that is going to be key, and they have time to do it. It's still August. It's still early August. I almost feel like if you become the hot team now, you still have too much time to cool down before October. So let's all just take a deep breath, stay the course, welcome these new guys in, see how they all fit in, stay healthy, avoid fatigue, and then in a couple of weeks, let's revisit the conversation of when's the right time to get hot. Speaking of hot, it was hot at Packers training camp where I was last week as well. We're going to talk about training camp a little bit and the Packers, what I saw and what we can expect when we come back on Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Stay tuned. So I took it a little bit long there just because I didn't know how much of your original yelling.
I don't know if
that
yeah,
cut
you
off.
hopefully you can delete all of it because you know what I mean. Like
that, I think I want to say you went for like 30 seconds to 45 seconds. So I was like, that's fine.
Yeah,
We'll just do that.
Yep.
Okay. And now this one is 13-15, and we can just talk. I'll talk about like kind of training camp experience, and then kind of where things are going. And we'll just go at 33. So we'll get out at 36-15.
Well, it's already saying 33 on my end.
Okay, go. Welcome back, everyone, to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Josh Albrecht, John Taylor. All of our Brew Crew talk for today's episode is complete. I feel good about it, John. I feel good about the Brew Crew talk. Time to talk about what was happening up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with our Green Bay Packers. So Steve Zabin and I were able to go up to training camp. It had been a minute since I'd been up at training camp. Training camp for me is always a unique experience because there's a ton of tradition, right, with the bike rides and all the fans that line up and they have their signs, and you see these players that are just trying to go out there and prove every minute what they can be, what they can do, you know, all these other things, which is great, right? All of that is great. And then there's the fact that I don't really know what the heck's going on. So you get on the sidelines, and it's you, and there's some people that, you know, they're part of a company that is having a training camp day, and they all get to go stand on the sidelines, and then reporters. But no one is telling you on the sidelines, like, what is going to be happening when or what you should be looking for. So you just kind of have to, like, pay attention to what everyone else is paying attention to. The only things that always stand out are, like, the 11-on-11s. That it seems like everything is like, okay, now we can focus on this. Or the kicking, right? Everyone can pay attention when Smack is out there. You go, all right, I know he's either going to hit it or miss it. So that we could absolutely focus on. But beyond that, the other things that I really noticed that were great were, one, the boys are in pads. So it's like, football is here. Let's go. And then two was we saw Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft was out there. He looked great. You know, obviously they're not pushing him full force, but to see him running drills and doing things like that on the sidelines and everything was great and awesome to see. So those were kind of the big takeaways from camp, beyond just the fact that, like, Cisse was still getting some reps out there. The defense in general looked to be kicking the offense's butt. Running plays, when they run running plays in training camp, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. I don't know how you can really tell, like, how good it actually was, because in a game, that guy's trying to break it, you know, and he's having to force through tackles. Here, it's like they're just slapping him. And it's like, okay, blow whistle, plays dead. On the passing plays, it's obviously a little bit more because they fight for the ball and did he catch it and blah, blah, blah. But also, can't touch the quarterback. there were a lot of plays we saw that, yeah, Love got the throw off, but if that was a real game, he would have been on the ground.
Yeah,
The
I thought
defense got there a lot.
yeah, I thought that was interesting hearing the reports that like Matt LaFleur came out and had like a team meeting after, and it's like, hey, we're touching the quarterbacks too much. And I was curious to your thoughts, or if there's any conversation. And do you think that's more of an indictment on the linemen or the defensive line being too aggressive? Any thoughts?
Maybe a
one way
little
or the
bit
other?
of both, but
Yeah.
it should be towards the offensive line.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're telling these guys that are, I mean, obviously they can't be stupid, right? Like you can't injure Jordan Love, but like they weren't getting close to injuring Jordan Love.
Mhm.
To me, and that's why it should be more of a, you're asking these guys that are trying to prove themselves in training camp to slow down because your offensive linemen aren't stopping them. No, that's more on your O line than it is your D line. And here's what I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that this is more of a sign that the O line isn't that bad, but that the D line is better than expected. I'm hoping that, this is a good sign of things to come for LVN and, some of these other guys that have looked great in camp, right? They look ready to go, and that we can have a little bit of promise in. But who knows? Who knows? It's still training camp. And you want to talk about looking at preseason games and going, well, these games don't matter. Training camp really doesn't matter in comparison. It's kind of the different levels of severity and what you're taking seriously as a fan and as a coach. I just think there's a ton of other things that they're seeing that, and they know what they're working on, and they don't tell us what they're working on. We just kind of have to see it, and then the reporters go and they ask them questions about it. But everything seems to kind of be ho-hum for the most part in Green Bay. The only thing that was kind of up there was Trace Mack, who has yet to have a perfect day at camp, to the best of my knowledge, and he deleted his social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, if you're worried about the pressure and comments and everything else, kicker's the wrong position for you, because you always have the pressure. Anytime you're on the field, it's all on you, bud. Even if there's a bad snap or something else, it's still looked at on you. Like, you can't have that be a factor. I just don't know if I saw something the other day, John. I thought this is kind of crazy. There were people that said, damn, the Packers did a better job of replacing Aaron Rodgers than they did Mason Crosby. And I was like, yep. Yeah, that unfortunately makes sense to me. I don't know that Smack is the guy. I also don't think we appreciated how lucky we were to have a guy like Mason Crosby. Not every team in the NFL finds a kicker and then has that kicker be their kicker for a decade. Like, that doesn't happen to every team. And
True.
I don't know that Smack's that guy either.
Well, and that's okay. How could we know? He's never kicked a game in an organized game in Lambeau, in anywhere. I thought it was really kind of cool this week. Cam Acord, new special teams coordinator, went and did a full demonstration about how he's kicking completely differently. That Daniel Whelan was on record as saying, like, oh, he wants the ball held in a specific way. And when Acord was asked about it, he said, like, oh yeah, we're moving the ball so that way he can keep his kick the same. I don't believe that's something that they were doing in college. I think this is him thinking about the game, like interacting with it thoughtfully. Like, I think Trace Mack could be the next Mason Crosby. I can't pretend to think that these isolated kicks in training camp aren't anything more than what they are, which is something that I wish was statistically higher in terms of, made field goals. But to act like Trace Mack is a bust when we drafted him in the 7th round, like, I can't get there. I can't do it. At least not yet. And to the comment about Aaron Rodgers, it's like, well, yeah, quarterback is the most important position in sports. Like, they should be spending a lot more time trying to make sure that happens than replacing Mason Crosby. Like, the Packers spend about as much time as you thinking about the specialists with the way that they produce, right? Like, Daniel Whelan was found money, and they're lucky they don't have to think about it. Also, fun fact too, I don't want to like defend Trace Mack too much because he needs to prove a lot still, but Matt Orzik injured, brought in a new long snapper. trying new holds. Like
Mhm.
I'm so not concerned with the results. And obviously the Packers are going to say that, but like specifically in this situation, so many variables are different right now that I'm just not going to worry about it until we get a large enough sample size to go like, is he making the kicks he needs to make? And if he's tinkering and trying to figure out the best way to do that still, then like, you know, maybe Matt LaFleur is onto something by telling the refs to stop signaling whether kicks are good or bad. Maybe there's more to be gained in training camp practice than just statistics that we can lose our minds about over the internet, you know? So
yeah, no, I think that's well said. I think that also we're focusing on that a little bit more because there's not a ton more to focus on, which again, I think is a good thing, right? At the time of this airing, family night will have already taken place up at Lambeau. You know, we're there. Like family night happened. We're here. Football is here. You know, and so it's go time. And I think that a lot of us as fans we're trying to find some juice to get us to when we can watch this team actually perform, and it just wasn't there. There wasn't anything truly to grasp to, and luckily we're just not that far away. Now we'll have preseason games, which I understand there's still preseason games, but there will be more for us to be able to watch and analyze from that than there is just with training camp. And so we'll be able to look ahead to those. And then before you know it, it's going to be week 1, which, you know, is what, a month away?
Yeah, we're there.
Just about a month away. So
yeah,
absolutely crazy that we've gotten to that point. And also, if, you know, beggars can't be choosers, the grass isn't always greener, use whatever cliche you want. You could look at some of these other teams, like the Niners, who are begging for camp to be done because every day at camp, it seems like they're losing another player to injury. So that could be the headlines that we're reading from 1265. And we're pretty lucky that it's not. Knock on as much.
Yeah, I mean, short of the tight end room to actually talk about some stuff. It's like, yeah, short of the tight end room, right? RJ Maryland, undrafted free agent, gone. Luke Lachey, gone. Guys that they brought in. They brought in some other guy. I'm not even going to pretend that I should care about his name because I don't know where he's at. You know, Luke Musgrave update. Sounds like this injury is not great. It sounds like it's not going to retire him. Like maybe it seemed like it could be, but they didn't make it seem like it was going to resolve itself in the short term. So, you know, I think they need to go out and get a tight end. I expect Goody to be like, go get a real tight end, as much as it's great seeing Wiley do literally everything until Tucker Kraft, but it's like, there's some like demand on him. And I just question whether or not he can really be the number 2 guy for this Packers offense, knowing the way Matt LaFleur wants to run it. So, you know, that's something I got my eyes on. You know, I think like we were, you know, my mea culpa from last week is like looking at 3 training camp days going like, what are the storylines? The answer is like, who knows? But like the full body of the training camp, there's been interesting things, right? If you look at the totality, like, you know, JG, Jonathan Gannon, sounds like everyone loves him. And say he's like a total like defensive sicko, which is awesome. You know, he was talking about versatility in his intro presser. It's like they have not ran a single 4-3. So there you go. They're blitzing a lot. There's been conversations about what does this defense look like without Micah Parsons? So is it more aggressive? What does it look like when he comes back? Hopefully they keep the cool stuff and they drop just like the aggressive blitzes just because they're trying to generate, you know, a lot of talk this week about 3 safety sets. Last I checked, Javon Bullard is a safety, even though he plays nickel cornerback. So it's like they do that. Interesting wrinkle. Edgerrin Cooper was out there. They were on the goal line. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff that gets kind of fun. Are they going to do it a ton? Who knows? But they need to find out if they can do it. And I think that's great. DDS has been inside a lot still all training camp. I think that's really interesting. So there's a lot to look at, but at the end of the day, it's just all speculation until they get into these real games. Like you said, and we see it like, you know, it sounds like the newest guy that everyone's fawning over is Anthony Campbell getting like earnest reps with the ones on the defensive line. I mean, most defensive tackles with the number 60 aren't meant to make it out of camp, but it sounds like he's really impressed. So this is the kind of fun stuff. Cisse looks competent. You know, Carrington Valentine's hurt and that's not good, but like we're watching the young buck go in and hold his own. Sounds like Matthew Golden's breaking out. So it's like, it's not like there isn't storylines, but what's awesome about it is like, the Packers have been building towards a team where the questions can kind of answer themselves. And like, this is the first year. It's like, yeah, here we go. We know what the receiving core is going to be. We know what we can expect from the running group. We know what we want out of our cornerbacks. Like, and we're seeing it all come to fruition. So while this hasn't been the most exciting training camp, to your point, what I'm really excited about is like, I am officially going with like Belton looking good at guard, with Ryan at center, with Jordan Morgan holding his own, I'm really thinking to myself, like, wow, these guys can really do something potentially to make me feel better about what does this season look like in terms of trying to win the NFC North. So
Yep. And hopefully all of that comes to fruition. Questions will be answered for all of our sports teams across the state of Wisconsin, and we will have more to discuss next time. Please tune in. We'll be here, so will you, on Don't Tell Me I Had a Fan, because we are not done yet.